To most people, this question would appear surprisingly easy to answer. Why, of course, humans are the most dominant species on the planet. But is this necessarily a good thing? Somehow, I'm not so sure. One of my granddads, who lived in India during the 60s, was a manager of various tea plantations in the Assam region, which is just south of the Himalayas and close to the Bangladesh border. He's told me many fascinating stories of his time there, but tonight I want to focus on one in particular. At the time he was living there was an area called the Northeast Frontier Tract, which was forbidden by the Indian government since it was home to many native tribes. My granddad would enter that territory in order to go fishing, and what he described was a beautiful, idyllic, and naturally intact place. And what was most spectacular, and what he remembers thinking when he was at that place, was that he could look at the soil beneath him and at everything that encircled him and think to himself, I'm probably the only person ever to have set foot in this spot. And to me, that's amazing, but it's becoming increasingly rare in our world nowadays. So, over 50 years on, my granddad, who now lives in the UK, decided to look up this place on Google Maps. And it's no longer restricted by the Indian government. And what he found was quite shocking. All sorts of hotel resorts, holiday complexes, shops, and the rest were popping up all along the Subansiri River, this place which was once so beautiful. And this is sad. Humans had invaded. This then led me to ask the question, are humans taking over the world? Because just from looking at that example, it would appear that we most certainly are trying our best to. Very few places remain unexplored nowadays, and as our human population increased over time, we realised our increasing potential to utilise a very dangerous weapon called power. We are the only species on the planet to destroy its own habitat, to reinvent our Earth into skyscrapers, roads, buildings, towns, and that's shocking. But what's even more shocking is the fact that we destroy the habitats of all other species on the planet. I'm sure you've heard all about climate change. It seems to loom over us everywhere we go like a bad smell. The term is so loosely chucked around nowadays that many people actually fail to recognise the significance of its meaning. And this is actually upsetting, because despite it being talked about, climate change is often neglected. It's muffled out by other political affairs, which arguably are still important. But at the same time, I think Theresa May herself can only listen to so much about Brexit. So much of what we're exposed to in the media is money. I'm sure you'll all agree that it consumes our lives, it rules our lives. But I want to draw your attention to something which maybe you've never considered or even questioned perhaps. And that is that money isn't actually real. I know it seems like quite a bold statement to make, but we made it up. Humans made it up. It's simply a humanized concept, a measure of calculating one's wealth. But it isn't real. And it baffles me why so many people become so fixated on something that doesn't exist. But climate change is real. It's actually happening to us. And you might think, well, how do I know that? I can't see any negative consequences in my life. But that's where you're wrong. We are the lucky ones. We are so wrapped up in our tiny, developed nation that we don't see the negative consequences that are happening all over the world. You only have to look at the recent cyclones in Mozambique to realise that climate change is happening. We are burning our most biodiverse rainforests, drilling into the most fragile ecosystems on the planet for mining, pumping toxic gases into our atmosphere, dumping plastics into our oceans, fighting wars with deadly explosives. And this is a problem. There is a limit to how much we can exploit the world, and one day there will be nothing left. Is this really the world that you want to live in? We can't make a change unless we know about it, and that is one of the biggest problems. We simply don't know. We're not informed by the brands, the companies which are feeding us our consumeristic lifestyles. We don't know that everything in our world comes from places that we couldn't even imagine. But I hope to see this change. I hope that we can educate our people to know what we are using and where it comes from. But I don't want to demonise the human species entirely, because I truly believe we are good people. It's simply the fact that we do not know, and that is our downfall. But perhaps all of this is of no concern to you anyway, because maybe you won't be alive to see the consequences. That's a common argument that I hear all over the place. But I'm sorry to say it isn't true. Because at the rate that we are destroying our rainforests, maybe you will. At the rate that we are filling up our landfill sites with rubbish only to release methane gas into the atmosphere, which is toxic, maybe you will. And at the rate that we are inventing the most technologically advanced, lethal and dangerous weapon ever to have existed on the planet, the atomic bomb, maybe you will. You see, you don't have to believe in climate change to see that this is a problem. The exploitation of our only planet, our home, is never the answer. I'm aware I've digressed from my original question, which is, are humans taking over the world? And to put it simply, yes, I do believe we are. But notice how I haven't asked, have humans already taken over the world? Because quite reassuringly, I don't believe we have. To put it in perspective, the NOAA estimates that 95% of the world's oceans remain unexplored. And that's a vast expanse. So maybe we aren't quite as powerful as we think. But this is why now is the perfect time to stop what we are doing and make a change. The anthropocentric view of the world is outdated. It's old. The rest of the world is trying its best to keep this planet healthy and alive. The plants which not only feed us, but allow us to breathe good quality air. The animals which roam the skies, the seas, the lands. The bacteria which are often underestimated as an entire domain, when actually they recycle our waste so that it doesn't stay in the ground forever. But they cannot work miracles, and the plastic carcasses which we so carelessly abandon will stay. I don't want to scare you into these apocalyptic visions, some kind of living hell, nor coerce you into acting out of fear. We are free individuals, and we make our own decisions. But like I said, we are also good people. And I hope that you can see that the good and the right thing to do is to protect our planet. We need to stop fighting against the rest of the world and instead fight with it for a better future. So if you take away anything from what I've said today, I hope it is one thing, that our planet is sacred. However you believe we came into existence, our planet is precious, it is special, it is unique, and it is most certainly worth protecting. Because ultimately, the world could survive without humans, but humans could not survive without the world. Thank you for listening.